Welcome to your personalized deep dive. Someone sent in some notes from Pharmacology 103. Looks like they're really hitting the books.
Yeah, Pharmacology 103, that brings back memories.
So we're going to kind of decode these notes and,
Break it down.
yeah, break it down. Make sure you're not just memorizing facts, but like really understanding how medications work.
Right, exactly.
Their journey through the body, maybe uncover some surprising facts along the way.
Absolutely. And, it's always amazing to me how many people take medications every day
Yeah.
and have really no idea what's going on inside,
Right.
what's happening in their body. We're going to pull back the curtain on all that.
Yeah.
So from how medications are developed to the intricate ways they work in your system.
Okay, let's unpack this first part. Your notes start with definitions of medication and drugs, and it seems like there's a subtle difference. It's not just semantics, right?
You're right. It's not just semantics. The way I think about it is drugs is like the overall category.
Yeah.
There's substances that are used for all kinds of things. Treatment, diagnosis, even prevention.
Right.
And then medication is specifically drugs that are prescribed for their therapeutic benefit,
Okay.
the things that make you better.
So, like, that over-the-counter pain reliever that I take for my headache,
Right.
that's considered a medication because it's treating my pain, but that contrast dye they give you before a CT scan,
Exactly.
that's a drug used for diagnostic purposes.
Exactly. And that's an example of how you could have one substance that's classified multiple ways,
Oh, interesting.
depending on its purpose.
Right.
Even something simple like baking soda can be a drug.
Really?
You think about it.
Yeah.
Antacid for heartburn,
Oh, okay.
but also ingredient in a cake.
Right.
It's all about context.
That's a great point. It's like water can be a refreshing drink or a destructive force of nature.
Right, exactly.
Now, my notes mention that most medications today are synthetic, but there was a time when we relied heavily on nature
Oh, yeah.
for our remedies, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've come such a long way from extracting medicinal compounds from plants and animals and even minerals.
Pretty amazing.
You imagine relying on an animal pancreas for insulin?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's where we run not too long ago.
Wow.
Thankfully, advances in pharmaceutical technology have allowed us to synthesize drugs in labs,
Right.
which ensures much greater consistency and purity.
Okay, very cool. It's really amazing how far we've come. Speaking of changing landscapes, my notes also mention the evolving roles of healthcare professionals when it comes to prescribing medication. It's not just doctors anymore, is it?
You're really catching on to the themes here. So physicians, of course, they still play that central role, but we're seeing other healthcare professionals being given prescribing privileges more and more. Nurse practitioners, physician assistants have been doing it for a while now.
Right.
But some states are even granting limited prescribing authority to pharmacists
Really?
because they recognize their expertise in medication management.
So it seems like healthcare is becoming more of a team effort,
Exactly.
with each professional playing a specific role in patient care.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, once a medication is prescribed, there are so many ways it can actually get into the body. We're talking about routes of administration. It seems like choosing the right route can make a huge difference in how quickly and effectively a medication works, right?
Absolutely right. So the choice of route, it really depends on a variety of factors.
Yeah.
The type of drug, how fast you need it to work,
Right.
even patient characteristics. I mean, for instance, someone with difficulty swallowing, you might need to give them a liquid medication
Okay.
or an injection even.
Makes sense.
Did you know that choosing the right route can actually dramatically impact a drug's effectiveness?
Really?
You think about it, a pill, you take a pill, it might take hours to work, right?
Right.
But you give an injection,
Yeah.
you could have relief in minutes in an emergency situation.
Wow.
You could even have it in seconds.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about getting the medication into the body. It's about getting it to the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
My notes list a bunch of different routes: oral, sublingual, inhalation, topical creams, transdermal patches.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible how many ways we've figured out to deliver medication.
And each route has its own advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
So oral medications, those are usually the most convenient,
Right.
but the absorption can be slow and a little variable.
Okay.
Injections are a lot faster.
Yeah.
The absorption's more predictable, but they're not patient-friendly.
Makes sense.
You think about things like inhalation.
Right.
You're targeting the lungs.
Okay.
Transdermal patches, that's for sustained release.
Wow.
So it's really about choosing the right tool for the job.
Yeah. Each route has its specific purpose and application. Speaking of tools, my notes emphasize the importance of reliable drug information. It seems like even those little package inserts that come with medications
Oh, yeah, those are important.
are a gold mine of information.
Absolutely. So many people just throw those away, but the package insert, it details everything.
Really?
Yeah, the drug's intended use, potential side effects,
Huh.
how to store it, dosage instructions.
It's really a mini encyclopedia.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it as a mini encyclopedia.
Okay.
But for healthcare professionals and even curious patients, there's even more out there.
Right.
Like the physician's desk reference, the PDR. It provides like comprehensive data on prescription drugs.
So whether you're a doctor prescribing the medication or a patient taking it, there's no excuse for being uninformed.
Exactly. There's always a place you can turn to get reliable information.
Oh, okay. Now, all this talk about drug information, different routes of administration, leads us to the big question. How do we know that these medications are actually safe and effective? Enter the FDA.
Ah, yes, the FDA.
Yeah.
The Food and Drug Administration plays a huge role in safeguarding public health when it comes to medications. So they're evaluating new drugs all the time. And they're not just looking at their effectiveness. They want to identify potential side effects, potential risks. This is a rigorous process.
Yeah.
It involves multiple phases of clinical trials, and each phase is designed to answer specific questions
Right.
about the drug's safety and its efficacy. But it doesn't end there.
Mm.
Even after a drug is approved and goes to market,
Wow.
the FDA continues to monitor its use, collects data on long-term effects,
Oh, wow.
any rare adverse events that may emerge.
So it's not just a one-time approval. There's ongoing surveillance to make sure that the medications stay safe over time.
Exactly. And the FDA also plays this crucial role in determining whether a drug should be available, like with or without a prescription.
Oh, okay.
They look at the risks and benefits. They consider things like potential side effects, the severity of the condition being treated,
Right.
the potential for misuse. So it's really this careful evaluation that helps to strike a balance between accessibility and safety.
It's reassuring to know that there's a system in place to make sure that the medications that we're taking are actually safe and effective.
Absolutely.
Especially with all these complexities. Speaking of complexities, my notes point out that a single drug can actually have 4 different names.
Oh, yeah.
It's no wonder people get confused.
You're telling me. But there's a logic to it, you know? Let's break it down. You've got the chemical name.
Okay.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Describes the drug's molecular structure. It's basically a blueprint for chemists. Then there's the generic name,
Okay.
which is kind of a shortened, easier-to-say version of the chemical name.
Right.
And that's pretty much universally recognized.
Yeah.
Then, when we talk about medications in everyday life,
Right.
that's when we use the brand name.
Right. Like Tylenol.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tylenol versus acetaminophen.
Exactly.
So the brand name is what the pharmaceutical company comes up with.
Okay.
It's the name they use to market the drug.
Yeah.
Think of it as the commercial identity. And then finally, you have the official name, which is usually the same as the generic name. And it appears in, like, official publications like the U.S. Pharmacopoeia,
Okay.
which sets those standards.
So a single medication can have a secret identity
Kind of. Yeah.
as a chemical formula,
Uh-huh.
a universal name that everyone can understand,
Right.
a commercial name for marketing, and then an official name for the rule book. It's
Yeah.
like a superhero with multiple alter egos.
I like that. That's a great analogy. And, it really highlights the importance of recognizing both generic and brand names,
Right.
especially for healthcare professionals. Can you imagine, like, a pharmacist dispensing the wrong medication
Oh, gosh.
because they didn't recognize a different brand name for the same drug?
Right.
That could have huge consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've tackled drug definitions,
Mm-hmm.
sources, prescribing trends, delivery methods, information resources,
That's a lot to remember.
the FDA's role, and even drug naming conventions.
Yeah.
My brain is buzzing right now with all these details.
We've covered a lot of ground, but you're doing great. Remember, we're aiming for understanding here,
Right.
not just memorization. And this journey's just beginning.
Oh, boy.
So now that we've decoded all the language of drug names, let's move on to the next part. Let's explore the forms these medications can take and how those forms impact how they're delivered into your system.
I'm ready for the next level of this deep dive. Bring on the fascinating forms of medication.
Welcome back to your personalized deep dive into pharmacology. So we just finished talking about drug names, the different ways medications get to the body, and now it's time to go even deeper and understand how those medications actually do their thing once they're inside.
Yeah, like how do they work? My notes have a section called pharmacokinetics,
Oh, pharmacokinetics.
which sounds a little intimidating, like something out of a sci-fi movie. What exactly does it mean?
It might sound complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Pharmacokinetics is basically the study of how drugs move through the body.
Okay.
It's their journey from entry all the way to exit. We're talking about absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. So, like, imagine you're tracking a package delivery
Okay.
from the moment it leaves the warehouse until it arrives at your doorstep.
Okay, I can visualize that.
Yeah,
So absorption is kind of the first step, right? It's how the medication gets from like wherever it's administered, so like swallowing a pill, getting an injection, into the bloodstream.
exactly. And that rate and extent of absorption, it depends on a lot of factors.
Okay.
You know, the drug's formulation, the route of administration,
Right.
even individual differences in physiology.
So that's why some medications work faster than others,
Exactly.
and why the same drug might affect different people differently.
Precisely. So, for instance, intravenous injections, those deliver the drug directly into the bloodstream.
Right, to the source.
Exactly. So it bypasses that absorption process,
Interesting.
which is why they work so quickly.
Okay.
But if you take a pill orally,
Right.
it has to, like, navigate the digestive system.
Makes sense.
Before it even gets to the bloodstream, that's a much longer and more complicated journey.
It's a long road.
Exactly. There's a lot of potential roadblocks.
Yeah, it's like taking the express train versus a winding scenic route.
Right.
Both get you there, but the experience is totally different. My notes also mentioned bioavailability,
Oh, yes.
which sounds important.
Bioavailability. It refers to the portion of a drug that actually makes it to the systemic circulation in an active form.
Okay.
The amount that's really there to do its job.
Right.
Because you can swallow a pill doesn't mean the entire dose is getting into your system ready to work.
Right. Right.
Think of it like ordering a pizza.
Okay.
You might order a large,
Yeah.
but if half of it gets lost in delivery,
Right.
you're only getting half the benefit.
I'm only getting half the pizza.
Exactly.
That's a good way to put it. So a drug's bioavailability can be affected by how well it's absorbed or how much of it gets broken down in the liver before it reaches the bloodstream.
Exactly. And that first pass effect,
First pass.
where the liver processes some of the drug,
Okay.
before it even gets to the rest of the body, that's super important.
So the liver kind of takes a cut.
It does. And that's one of the reasons why drug doses are so carefully calculated, you know.
Oh, okay.
You want to make sure that enough of the active drug is getting where it needs to go.
To do its job. Okay, so we've got absorption. It's in the bloodstream. What happens next?
Well, then comes distribution. That's how the drug travels throughout the body. It goes to all these different tissues and organs.
Okay.
It's like a complex network of highways and byways, you know.
Wow.
The drug is being carried around by the bloodstream.
I imagine some areas of the body are easier to reach than others, like depending on blood flow, you know?
Right. Exactly. And certain drugs are attracted to certain tissues.
Really?
For example, some medications are very fat soluble,
Oh.
and they tend to accumulate in fatty tissues.
Okay.
Others bind to proteins in the blood.
Interesting.
So this selective distribution is really important when you're designing drugs for a specific target in the body.
So you're basically sending a package to a specific address.
Exactly.
Some destinations are harder to get to than others.
Right.
And sometimes the delivery method needs to be, like, tailored accordingly.
Right.
What happens to the drug once it reaches its destination?
That's where metabolism comes in. That's how the body modifies a drug chemically. It mainly happens in the liver.
Okay.
And this transformation, what it does is it usually makes the drug more water soluble.
Oh, interesting.
And that makes it easier to get rid of.
Okay.
So the liver is kind of like a processing center.
Okay.
It breaks down the drug into things called metabolites.
Okay.
And those are much easier to eliminate from the body.
So it's like the liver is this busy factory of these specialized enzymes. They're just working away, breaking down all these drugs.
Exactly. And that's super important because it prevents those drugs from building up
Right.
in the body,
Right.
which could lead to side effects.
Nobody wants that. Okay, and how do these metabolites, how do they actually leave the body?
Well, that's the last step. It's called excretion. The kidneys are really important here because they filter all these waste products, including drug metabolites, from the blood.
Right.
And then they get eliminated in the urine.
Okay.
There are other ways too, like through bile, sweat, even your breath.
So the kidneys are like the body's sanitation department,
Right, yeah.
removing all the byproducts of this whole process.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've got absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion.
Yeah. The four horsemen of pharmacokinetics.
It's amazing how all those factors work together
Right.
to determine how a drug behaves in the body. There's also something in my notes about half-life.
Oh, half-life.
What does that mean?
That's a measure of how long it takes for half of the drug to be eliminated.
Okay.
It's important because it influences how often you need to take the drug.
Right.
Think of it like a clock. Every half-life, the amount of active drug in your system decreases by half.
So a drug with a short half-life, like a couple of hours, that would need to be taken more frequently than a drug with a longer half-life.
Exactly.
That might only need to be taken once a day or even less.
Right, exactly.
Wait.
So understanding a drug's half-life is key
Okay.
to designing an effective treatment plan.
Right. So you can make sure there's enough of the medication in the body without causing, too much or too little.
Exactly. No fluctuations.
So it's kind of like finding the right rhythm
Exactly.
for taking medication, making sure you're maintaining a steady level, no peaks or valleys. Okay, so we've got absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, half-life. It's incredible how all these factors come together
It really is.
to figure out like a drug's effectiveness and safety.
It's this beautiful symphony
Wow.
of biological processes. And we're just scratching the surface, of understanding
It's amazing.
of how drugs interact with our bodies.
Right. And speaking of complexities, my notes have this thing called pharmacodynamics.
Pharmacodynamics.
Which takes us even deeper.
Even deeper, right.
Yeah, into how drugs work.
So pharmacodynamics focuses on how the drug works in the body, how does it interact with its target
Okay.
to produce those effects.
Got it.
So if pharmacokinetics is all about the drug's journey, pharmacodynamics is about the destination
Right.
and what it does once it gets there.
Okay. So we're switching gears now from the delivery system to like the mechanism of action.
Exactly.
Like how it actually interacts with our cells. This is where things start to get a little fuzzy for me.
I know, it's a lot to take in, but we'll break it down step by step. Okay, so at the core of pharmacodynamics are these interactions between drugs and their targets. And the targets are things like receptors, enzymes, ion channels.
Okay, so break down those targets a little bit for me.
All right, think of these targets like specialized little parts within the cells that the drugs can interact with
Okay.
to trigger specific events.
So receptors, enzymes, ion channels. It's like a cast of characters.
Exactly, it's a whole cellular drama going on in there. So receptors, those are like the gatekeepers of the cells.
Okay.
They're proteins embedded in those cell membranes, and they act like locks.
Okay.
Drugs are like keys.
Yeah.
They bind to these receptors, and they trigger a cellular response.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a very specific interaction. The drug has to fit perfectly into the receptor to unlock its effects.
It's like a lock and key.
It is, exactly.
Yeah.
Just on a molecular level.
Right.
The shape of the drug, the chemical properties, all that stuff determines how strongly it will bind to a specific receptor.
Wow.
And when a drug binds to its receptor, it sets off a chain reaction within the cell,
Okay.
which leads to the therapeutic effect.
Okay, that makes sense. What about enzymes?
Oh, enzymes. Those are like tiny little machines inside the cells.
Okay.
And they speed up biochemical reactions.
Wow.
They're crucial for tons of processes in the body. Some drugs actually work by either inhibiting, which means slowing down, or activating these enzymes. They're kind of tweaking their activity to achieve a specific therapeutic goal. So it's like adjusting the settings on a machine,
Okay.
to change how it works.
Got it. So the drug can either boost or block the actions of the enzymes?
Exactly, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
There.
For example, some drugs for high cholesterol, those work by inhibiting an enzyme that helps make cholesterol.
Oh, okay.
So it slows down that production in the body.
Got it. And what about ion channels?
Ion channels, those are like little tunnels, and they regulate the flow of ions.
Okay.
So those are charged particles like sodium, potassium, calcium across those cell membranes.
Right.
And they're really important for things like nerve impulses, muscle contractions, tons of other processes.
So if drugs can manipulate these ion channels, they can potentially affect a lot of things in the body.
Yeah. Drugs that target ion channels are used for a whole bunch of things like heart arrhythmias, epilepsy, chronic pain.
It's amazing how these tiny interactions can have such a huge impact on our health. But with all this complexity, how do healthcare providers keep it all straight?
It takes years of study, and you have to keep learning, honestly, to master this stuff.
Wow.
But Understanding how drugs work at their core
Yeah.
is so essential for making good decisions about treatment.
Right?
Think of it like learning a new language.
Okay.
It takes time, it takes effort,
Yeah.
but the reward is worth it.
Absolutely. So it's clear that pharmacodynamics is crucial for understanding how drugs work at that really small level. But it's also becoming clear to me that it's important for patients to have some understanding of this as well.
You're absolutely right. The more informed patients are about their medications, the better.
Right.
They can be more involved in making decisions about their own health care.
Right. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your health. Okay, so we've made it through this whole journey of absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion.
It's quite a journey.
We've delved into pharmacodynamics, where drugs interact with their targets to make those therapeutic effects happen. It's been quite a ride, but I'm looking at my notes here, and it seems like there's still more to explore.
You're right. We've covered so much,
Yeah.
but we're not quite done.
No, boy.
There's this other really important part of pharmacology that we still need to talk about.
Okay.
And it can have, big consequences for your health and well-being.
Okay. Intriguing. I'm ready for the final leg of our deep dive. What's next on our list? We've covered so much in this deep dive already. It's like we're learning a secret language.
Yeah, the language of your body. And, when you understand it, you can really start to take control of your own health.
Absolutely. And speaking of taking control, my notes have this big section on drug interactions. And honestly, it's kind of scary. It makes it sound like all these medications we take, they don't always play nicely together.
That's true. Drug interactions are a big deal in pharmacology. What you eat, other meds you're taking, even some supplements, they can all affect how a drug works in your body.
So it's not just about mixing different prescriptions. It's like everything we put into our bodies could interact with our medications.
Exactly. And those interactions, they can be minor, but they can also be really serious, even dangerous. And, the thing is, there are just so many different things that can affect it. It's hard to say exactly what will happen when you mix two substances.
So like a big dose of caution is needed here.
Always.
Hmm?
What are some of the common types of drug interactions we should be aware of?
Right. Like what should we look out for?
Well, one common thing is when one drug affects how another drug is absorbed. Like some meds need that acidic environment in the stomach to really get absorbed well.
Okay.
But then you take an antacid at the same time, and that neutralizes the acid.
Oh.
So the first drug, it might not get absorbed as well, and it won't be as effective.
It's like you're trying to bake a cake and someone swaps out the ingredients.
Right. The cake's not going to turn out how it should.
Exactly.
Another thing that happens is during metabolism, that process in the liver that we talked about.
Right, where it breaks everything down.
Right. Some things can make the liver work faster or slower.
Oh.
So that changes the amount of drug in your system, and that can lead to unexpected effects.
So one drug can like mess with how the liver handles another drug.
Exactly. And then sometimes the interaction, it happens at the target site. Like imagine two drugs both want to bind to the same receptor.
Okay.
Well, they're going to compete with each other.
Oh.
And that means one or both of them might not work as well.
It's a competition.
It is. It's like a game of musical chairs. They're all trying to grab a seat,
Yeah.
And that just goes to show how important it is to know how different drugs work so we can stop those interactions from happening.
That makes sense. Now, what about this grapefruit juice effect? Is that a real thing or just a myth?
The grapefruit juice effect, it's absolutely real. And grapefruit, it's got these compounds that stop a specific enzyme in the liver from doing its job. That enzyme is what breaks down a lot of medications.
So if you drink grapefruit juice with certain meds, it could make them way stronger.
Exactly. Because they're not getting broken down as quickly. So you end up with more drug in your blood, and that can lead to side effects or even an overdose.
Right.
It's crazy how something as simple as a glass of juice can have that much of an effect.
It seems like a good idea to just talk to your doctor or pharmacist
Oh, absolutely.
before you start any new medication.
Definitely. They can give you the best advice based on your specific situation.
Right. What about other factors that could influence these interactions? My notes say age is a big one.
It is a big one. As we age, our organs don't work as efficiently,
Right.
especially the liver and kidneys. So older adults, they might need a lower dose or a different medication entirely to avoid problems.
So a dose that might be fine for a younger person could be way too much for an older adult.
Exactly. It's about finding the right amount for each person.
Right. And what about any health conditions someone might have?
Oh, absolutely. Things like liver disease, kidney disease, that can really change how your body processes medication.
Right.
And it can increase those risks we've been talking about. Doctors really need to consider everything: age, health conditions, even lifestyle, to prescribe the right thing.
It's like a giant puzzle.
Yeah.
So many factors to consider. And genetics seems to be a big piece of that puzzle, too. My notes talk about pharmacogenomics, which sounds super high tech.
Yeah, pharmacogenomics, that's like personalized medicine on steroids. So basically, it's all about looking at how our genes affect how we respond to
Oh,
medications.
wow.
The idea is to use your genetic information to say, who will really benefit from this drug and who might have side effects.
So it's like a personalized guide to medication.
That's the dream.
Hmm.
We're not quite there yet, but that's where it's heading. Imagine fewer side effects and the best possible treatment just for you.
That is so cool. It's exciting to think about what the future holds for medicine. But for now, with all these potential interactions, what are some things we can do to stay safe and make sure our medications are actually doing what they're supposed to?
The most important thing is to talk to your healthcare providers. Tell them about every medication you're taking, even vitamins and over-the-counter stuff.
So just be really upfront about everything.
Exactly. And read those labels, those long instructions.
Right. Those are important.
If anything doesn't make sense, just ask. You have the right to understand what you're taking.
Be your own advocate. Right.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
This deep dive into pharmacology has been amazing. From drug classifications and how they get into our bodies to that complex dance of pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, and now these drug interactions, we've really learned a lot.
It's been quite a journey, but look at you. Now those complicated drug names and all those instructions, they're probably a little less scary, right?
I feel like I can finally read a prescription label without my head spinning.
That's what we want. We want you to be in control of your health.
So for our listeners who have been with us this whole time, what's the one thing they should remember from all this?
Be curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions, do some research, and talk to your doctor and pharmacist. The more you know, the better you'll be able to take care of yourself.
Well said. Knowledge is power, and knowing about your medications, it gives you the power to be your own health advocate. So what really stood out to you today? What piqued your interest? Use that to keep exploring. You might be surprised at what you find. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.